Greetings, my friends. I hope I find you well. What a moment. What a time we're living in. You see, we're bringing you this program, My Journey with God. And in this program, we want to track and trace and follow a few people that have had an encounter with divinity, that have had a journey with God. Perhaps if it's in life, they've bought the t-shirt, they've worn it, it's torn now. They can tell you all about their life story. Some of them are young, some are growing up, and they are here to share their story. And today I've got a very special guest. I have not met her in person before, but this is the first time I'm talking to them on set. But we've met on social media. You see the beauty of internet. You meet people and you get to know them before you meet them. And so she's here and she's going to share with us her journey with God. Greetings, my sister. How are you?
I'm doing great. And greetings, viewers at home.
It's a blessing to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for
Thanks to your openness to do this. And I'm really thrilled. I mean, I'm really excited because in this program, we want to talk about you.
Yes.
And your journey with your God.
It's been a journey.
Yes.
It's been a journey. There's a lot.
How much time do you have? Because I've got enough time.
Let's listen to the Spirit.
Yes. So let's talk maybe from way back in the beginning, because this is your journey. When did it start and how did you realize you have a journey with Him?
I believe that, we as people of God, we need to have a relationship with God one way or the other. And there's always going to be a void in you, especially when you know that, there's something missing. So I knew that there was something missing in my life growing up. I felt that void. And I told myself that, you know what, I'm not going to fill this void with anything else. I must just look back and say, I need God. And that's when I realized that after giving my life to God, I realized this is what has been missing in my life. But
let's go back and maybe if you remember any moment in your life, a memorable experience, you say, perhaps this was my turning point. This was my pivot. This is when I discovered I'm loved. There's a God who cares for me. What was that moment?
I would say it's when there's a lot that I went through. It might not be, we might not weigh them the same, but for me, I feel like it's a lot. And I've seen the love of God in so many ways in my life. There were times when I was about to just give up, especially also on God. But I've seen Him coming through. I've seen Him doing things for me. And I've seen Him, supplying. And I've seen prayers being answered. And I realized that, man, God is good. God is so good.
I know you are at a very high level right now. You're telling us in terms of the highlights. But let's talk about your upbringing.
So my upbringing is a complicated one. I did not grow up in one space.
Okay.
So from birth, I would say that I say something like 10 years, 11 years with Ugogo and Umkhulu. I was that child that was left there.
Okay.
And my mother had to give me away actually to her sister, her older sister who could not have kids. So then she left me there. So I was supported by his sister. I did not know who my mom is until around 11 or so. But I would say that during those years, it was so beautiful to witness. I had a grandfather. He's the one actually who just brought me closer to God.
Yes.
So he's the one who taught me also the Lord's Prayer. He was from Tanzania, though. He would try to...
You need to explain that a little bit.
Okay.
We're in South Africa. Tanzania is so far from here.
Yes. I'm a Tanzanian grandchild.
You're kidding.
So
on Kulu's side?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, my grandfather is from Tanzania. So obviously he struggled with Setswana and all of that.
Yes, because they speak Swahili in that side. Yeah.
Yes. He also taught us one of the songs from Swahili. I remember the lyrics there and there. And he taught us how to pray. Every night he will gather us around his bed and he would say, come, let us pray. And he would say, you can pray in Setswana while he prayed in his language.
Wow.
And he always told my grandmother, teach them this prayer, because my grandmother was Tswana.
All right.
You know, so it was just amazing to witness that every night we would gather around and pray. So he had so much faith. He believed.
Wow.
And that motivated me so much. Even when I went to school, I already knew the prayer because we would pray at school. But I remember that this prayer is the one that we pray every night.
Is he still alive?
Oh no, he passed on. He's late. Yes.
All right. You talked about your grandmother as well. What role did she play in your early years?
Oh, I would say, she was also amazing. She was also amazing because during those years, those were the best years of my childhood. Because after that, a lot happened. But those years, my grandmother, what I remember is how she also believed in prayer, because they had a church, an apostolic church though, and she believed in sharing. So even when because it was not only me, there were other grandchildren around. So I saw her, I remember moments where she would just cook with a big pot, and she would say, pray before you eat so that you can be full.
Wow.
Because we were a lot. It was not only me, there were other, and we would always pray. And I remember whenever she did, we knew that we had to watch the table carefully and run for prayer, whoever prays first. So she also played a role, knowing that you have to pray for the food so that you can be full.
Wow. Because this is a journey. You have not always remained a child. You grew up. So talk to us about, as you were growing up in their home, you said you were many. Did you go to the apostolic church? What are your early spiritual experiences besides the prayer? But now going into the community, into the church, what are some of your memorable events?
I did go to the church because that was emphasized that every Sunday you must be at church. My grandfather will even make sure that he closes his home. So we had to go to church. And we had no other choice. So
you were summoned?
Yes, we had to be in church. It was my bishop, bishop. So, it was their church. So we had to be there. And looking at us, we were at church because we were so many. So when we got in church, 11 of us or 12, I don't remember. But the church would be so full. And it was such a beautiful experience, and because the Bible was read. Yeah. And
this is the apostolic church.
Yes.
So what are some of the things God is revealing to you at that place?
My grandfather, there were things that he did not believe in that were done, especially even in the family. I remember there was a time when my grandmother wanted to do something traditionally and stuff like that. I remember my grandfather, they were even having a dialogue. Why do we have to do this? We are praying. Why do we have to do this? Because there will be moments where they invite a sangoma in the house. They will have to tie us ropes and, all of those things. And I remember vividly that my grandfather was always against those things. And now when I look at it, I see that, his faith that he had in God, he knew that he doesn't need other things, but just God himself. So that also brought me closer to God. I grew up wanting to practice what my grandfather believed in. And
are you practicing it now? We'll find out. But then you went to school. Talk to me about your early years in school and how did God reveal himself? Because schooling can be challenging, especially if you're an African child growing up in a not so privileged environment. You are many. And especially as a girl child, one of the experiences we know about girls is that they are left out. But talk to us about how God led you through your education and those early or secondary or tertiary education levels.
Yes. So from my grandfather's house, then I was taken. So I had a sister. We were a package. Wherever she goes, I go. And wherever I go, we were always, and we experienced a lot of challenges together.
Right.
We only
is it a big sister? Or?
She was older than me, just I think a year older. She was from my aunt. She's my aunt's child, actually.
Right.
So we were taken and we went and stayed with my other aunt. She's late now. And the environment was not so good. The environment was not so good. I remember even my uncle called my grandmother to say, come and take the keys. Why did you have to bring them here? So, you know, with age, I think my grandmother somehow, she was getting tired because she was getting old. You know, the kids are exhausting, you know. So she has to make sure that others go back to their mothers, others go there. But I could not go back to my mother by that time. So me and my sister, we went and we stayed in that house. There was so much abuse that was going on in that house. And when my uncle called my grandmother, I remember I was so excited when I saw my grandmother coming that finally we're going to be saved, because it was not a good experience watching abuse, people fighting in front of us. But then I was very happy when she came and she took us back to the village all in 1 year. And then I went back and I went to the village again, attended school there. I think after 2 weeks, my aunt, the other one, the one who was my mom, my adopted mom, now she came and she also took us, me and my sister. So I changed school 3 times in that year, just in a period of 2 months, you know. So we thought what we experienced there was abuse or witnessing abuse. But then when we got to that house, because now she's married, the abuse was even worse. Because not only did we see it, but we also experienced it, you know. And it was difficult. And we stayed there for 4 years, you know.
Yeah.
So there were times... Wait. Excuse me. So there were times when I actually wished that my grandmother would come and save us again.
Right.
Well, and yeah, we stayed there for 4 years. It was bad, you know, we were beaten. I remember one moment that stands out the most is when there was a time when I told my uncle, you know, the one that was my aunt's husband, you know, that you've been invited to school, I have an award, you know, those merit awards, you know, at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Can you just come with me and all of that? He went with me because he was a teacher also.
Right.
So truly speaking, he valued education. He loved education. So he went and I got a certificate, just a certificate.
Okay.
And to him, it was a big deal.
Wow.
And when we got home, I was excited because the environment was not so good, but at least I tried. I did my best to get recognized, you know. And I remember he called me back when I went to my room. He said, so Mina, I went there for a certificate while other parents were there to collect, you know, cups and, you know, medals and all of that. And he beat me up for that.
Wow.
So it was difficult because we did not know what to do. At that time, we were young. And my aunt wasn't always at home. So we were scared of him. Whenever he comes home, we knew that, tonight, you know, because he was drinking heavily, you know, he was drinking and he would be so polite and nice when he's sober. And we all we have to now adjust to his mood. You know, he's happy now. Let us all be happy in the house. And when he's drunk, we know when the car comes now, we are shaking. We are trying to fix things. We don't know where to touch because, you know, so he will beat us up, say things. And, you know, I always say, I wish at that time, maybe what he was saying, basically what I'm saying is that his words hurt me more. It broke me more than the beating. So maybe if he would have just beaten up and kept quiet, you know. But then he said things that later on in life, they catch up with you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing those experiences. And I know they're quite deep and personal to you, but it's good that you're sharing that journey, because people don't know where we come from, and sometimes we don't look like where we come from.
Yes.
Essentially because of the journey you are on. So maybe share with us a little bit as you are receiving the certificate and beaten for it. Your best effort maybe is not good enough to somebody. Things are being said to you. Where does this leave you in terms of your faith in God, which Umkhulu had ingrained in you?
I would say that, you remember I said I was somehow praying that my grandmother would come and save us again, because I felt like if she was to come, then maybe, things would be better for us than staying here. We'd rather go back to the village, because we're staying in a small town there. So they thought that, for better education, better, let them stay
Opportunities,
there.
yeah.
Yes, but then the environment was not good for us. Somehow we felt like we needed her, and she did not come through. Remember, my sister would always say, let's pray and hope that she will come. And she never came until we stayed for 4 years, until we went back to our parents, my biological mom, because I told her that, I can't do this anymore, because I felt like I was also growing a bit. I went back home to my mom, and I found the situation just being so bad now. There at least we were eating everything, and we never lacked, but there was an abuse. But now we go back home, and it's sometimes we don't have toiletries, we don't have this, we don't have that. My mom now has turned to be a single mother. My father left, so it was difficult to see that. And I have faith in God, because we were attending. Now she was a IPCC, remember?
Okay.
So we would go there, and it was tough. I saw her also acquiring skills, praying and doing all of that. And somehow I felt like, why should you continue praying when things are like this? Because I felt like my faith was tested again at a young age, because I saw her suffering, and I saw her at the same time trying to get up and do things for me and my brother and sister. But we never slept hungry, though we would eat Nana starch water and pap and all of that. She made it happen, man. She made it happen. She stood up and fought. We might have lacked some toiletries, some shoes, some of the things, but food were always there, so I saw her faith.
Great stuff. So your mom's faith helps you to see the reason to continue, but you've got questions and you are wondering, this praying thing is not working.
Yes.
It's not happening.
I felt like that, especially she had the faith, and somehow I felt like God, because I felt like it was too personal for me. I experienced all of this, and now I come home to this. The time when I just decided, let me just go and be with my mother. And I come home to poverty. And
so there is love at home. Mom is loving. The abuse has stopped.
Yes.
She speaks well to you, but there's now material challenges and a lack. So how does this then change your day-to-day faith and routine? Where is God now in your life at this stage, and at what age is this?
I think I was doing grade 9, because that's when I went home. Just before high school, last year before you go to high school, I was doing grade 9. And she always encouraged us to go to church, and she didn't have much, but she made sure that she bought a uniform, and we started going to church. We kept the Sabbath, because she insisted on saying, here we keep the Sabbath. They also insist on that. They are very strict on that.
All right.
So we went to church, me and my sister. My brother was very young. Even when she doesn't go to church, but we went. I started again, saying, okay.
Now, I want you to also share a little bit more, because it feels like this is where your faith began to take root. You are now being perhaps a second level after Umkulu and Ugogo. Talk to me a little bit more here about your experiences with God. You're now mature. It sounds like you're now speaking for yourself and sharing what's in your mind. You're now beginning to influence where you should be and who should raise you. So talk to us about how your faith begins to affect not only your family, but other relationships that you have.
I want to talk about mostly why I decided again to find this faith that I'm at now and how I came about it. Because I was in high school, I had a friend again who was a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
Because somehow we stopped going to the church, I remember there was a time when our house got burnt and we lost the uniform.
Oh no.
That red and white thing, and we lost everything. And to our surprise, we had a Bible in the house and we were surprised, why didn't this Bible burn also? Because we lost also books. We had to make affidavits that we lost school books, we lost everything. But, it remained there. And we stopped going to the church.
Where is that Bible?
I don't know if it's still there, but we were surprised because you can't do what material is this?
Is this one?
And so why we left the church is again because we lost the uniform. Now we want to go to church. Me and my sister, we don't have the uniform anymore. So they made us feel like, because you're not wearing a uniform, why are you here? They asked us why. But our house got burnt. We don't have a uniform anymore. Then I remember my sister, she was like, I will never go back to the church anymore. So now we had to find a church. Now I'm like, now I have to find a church, because now I'm not going back there. It was
So this church kind of speaks down at you, rejects your coming simply because of a uniform.
We didn't look like the part actually.
Wow.
And and they knew. So I get at this church, they have deacons who sits at the door. When you come in, he opens, he closes. The church always stays closed.
All right.
Yeah, so he saw us coming in and he took us out. He was like, where's your uniform? Why are you wearing like that? And the black color is forbidden. And these were the things that we tried to come up with. Okay, let's wear a dress like this. And so, I was like, but we lost everything. Like, we don't have uniform anymore. And that's the day where we said, no, here we are no longer coming. We are no longer coming. So I had a friend who was a Seventh-day Adventist. He would always come home to my home. So this is
at school now? Your school friend?
Yes, he was my school friend.
Okay.
I remember there was a time when he came. He would always come wearing a suit. Just after some, why are you wearing like that? Where are you from? No, I'm from church.
Sabbath people in their suits, eh?
So I'm like, why are you wearing? And but this friend also played a major role in my life, because he was also so very active. He was different from the rest of us. He would share the word. He was one of those students who would stand in front of us during assembly and share the word, And then one day when he came after church wearing all the uniform, I'm like, where's your church? Why are you always wearing like that? Then he said, no, my church is just on the others. I'm like, I've never been aware of it. But anyway, I will go someday. But tell me, I wanted to know why, again with the way.
Did you want to know why these suits, or why?
Because he was different again. I wanted to know the God that he serves. I wanted to know why he's different. Why do you stand in front of people like that? Why do you always talk about God? It troubled me. I wanted to know, why? Where's your church and all of that?
Okay.
And he came, he said, he told me he said a lot about Ellen White, 1844 and all of that. Okay. And already somehow I was convicted. I was like, this, and we took the Bible, we read some of the scriptures. It made sense, because we had a Bible at home, but we did not read it. Because where I'm coming from at IPCC during those days, only the pastor reads the Bible.
Okay.
We do not touch the Bible. We don't read. You don't even carry it to church.
All right.
So, but then this friend, he said, let's read, and all of that. Then we went through it and I started to understand. I was like, oh, okay. I will go. I will go someday, you know. And yeah, I remember I did not go the following Sabbath. And oh man, I don't know, maybe it was because I was thinking about it too much. But I dreamed myself being in this place where the singing was different. You know, the singing was different, and somehow I was convicted, no man, it must be the church. I need to visit the church.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And we went there, you know, I already had a child. We went there, me and my daughter, and since then, and yeah.
You haven't left?
I haven't. I will never.
Now, I want you to still just look back and walk us through. You've talked us about your childhood, your early years being raised by different homesteads, your relatives, but also going to mom, facing the challenges you faced. Your house is burnt. You are out of school books and church uniforms, and you really get a raw deal. Where is God in all of this? And can you walk me through your journey now? I hear you saying this, brother, but I want to hear from Neoh inside of you. What is God saying to you? Where is He leading you? And what does your journey look like? Your problems haven't ended.
They haven't.
Yeah.
They
and
haven't.
so walk us through that journey, and perhaps if you could highlight those key moments. I think this brother must have been a very powerful orator. Adventist are like that. I think most of them that I know, they are like on the money, on the Bible, on the verses, and very intellectually sound.
He was.
Yeah, but let's come down to your life. What is happening at your personal level, where you are seeing the human you, but also there's this God who's calling you to this life. How do you respond?
So, when I visited the church, I knew that I'm not coming back. Like, I'm not going to go out again, because I always wanted to belong. You know, I always knew that there is God, you know, though at times challenges will make you doubt His availability in your life, but I knew that there is God, and I wanted a true church, you know. And after my friend told me everything, I knew, no, this is a true church. Because when I read the Bible and everything now, it just makes sense. So I would say that again, it wasn't an easy thing, because I was still a child. And in the midst of the confusion that I grew up in, I don't want to say that I grew up a confused child, because that has somehow also, my confusion also, somehow during my varsity days, it caught up with me. I saw that, I'm confused.
About what now?
I was somehow confused, because I did not know what is it that I wanted. Even choosing even major things like...
your courses.
Because I changed courses 3 times.
Wow.
Because that's how I grew up. Again, I changed. Changing. And now...
You're trying to find yourself.
You know,
where are you comfortable in?
And that one is just really like it.
And how did you then go through that? How did God help you through those difficult young years? I'm sure there's a young person out there who's experiencing the same. I actually interviewed another sister, Elizabeth, who shared similar experiences, Monareng, about her career playing a huge role in her journey with God.
Yes.
So I'm quite interested and curious. Where did God lead you to?
Hey, you know, I was, like I said, I was so confused. I had the funding because I did good at school. The thing is, now, here's the money now, here's NSFAS, what do you do? That's what I'm saying. I struggled with identity and finding myself. I did not know who I am. And that made me feel so empty. It's like, here I am now. What do I do? My friends are pushing. And I'm here. I've studied this. I left. I'm studying now this, you know, and I was so confused.
Did you feel that perhaps the words of those who spoke into your life were beginning to catch up with you?
I thought so. I felt like that. I felt like, especially when we were about to do assignments, you felt like, no, really, you are not good for anything. You know, you're not going to make it. why are you even pushing this hard? Why are you even trying to do this? You know, and I felt like, no, this module is too much. This course is too much. Let me leave it and try another one, you know. And until I found my identity in Christ, because I knew that I had to find me, you know, so that I can continue with life. But I struggled because I didn't have that relationship with God, you know. And since then, once he came into my life, that's when I found who I am. And I always say, you know, until you find Christ, you can't push life without him. You know, in anything, you need God. Yeah. And he has shown me that I need him. Because at that time I thought, it's just cool. Register and do the course, and, you know. Yeah. But then...
So which course did you finally graduate with? Just curious.
I did paralegal in HR and PR.
Okay.
Yes. But before that, I changed a lot. I did social work, dropped out. Psychology, dropped out. LLB, I dropped, because I was like, who am I? You know, even the one that I studied, I was still a bit, I'm like, let me just do something just to have something, you know.
So if you were to advise that Neoh back then, who was struggling in those areas, what would you have wanted God to help you with early so that you don't get lost at that stage? What would you give as advice to someone out there so that they don't repeat the same confusion and, you know, identity crisis of who am I, what am I good at, and what would you say you could have done differently back then?
I would say to the younger me to surrender their life to Christ, because that's why I'm saying I even had a child during that early age. You know, I think I was 18, 19. Just after I finished, then I had a child. You know, like, because I was just pushing life. You know, I'm alive. So I finished school. I finished my grade 12. Then what? You know, even when I went to school, I was like, let me just go. Because, you know, I qualified for NSFAS. Let me just go. So I would say to a younger self that do it with God. Let it start with God. And in the midst of the confused world, because the world will also confuse you, go back to God and ask him, who am I? What is it that I can do? Because he's the one who created us. He's the one who knows best, you know, and he knows our tomorrow. So I would say to a younger person, do it with God. Don't try to push, either be a career, a business, or whatever that you want to do. Let it start with God. Have a relationship with God.
So how do you have that relationship? What are some of the secrets that Neoh has about maintaining your relationship with God? I'm sure you've grown into some, but there are things you used to do that you do no more, like we see. Yes. But how has your relationship evolved now? And what are some of the things God has taught you to maintain your faith?
Oh, man. The journey has been challenging, but God has been great. And God has shown himself in my life so many times, especially when now you're raising, you're looking at your daughter like, this one is looking up to me. Now I need to live right. I've seen it starts again with the relationship with God, like you say, and you need to maintain it. You need to read the word. You need to pray. You need to go to church. You know, this thing of I left church, I did not leave God. It does not even make sense to me, because you need the church. Yes. And I always say again, some of us, we are still standing because of the prayers of the saints. You know, we had people who were praying for us, and had it not been for them, we wouldn't be here. You know, so relationship with God is very important. It's very important, especially at a young age. You know,
it's unfortunate you can't tell me where that Bible is, because I think you should have held on to that Bible that survived the fire.
You know, and it was those old Bibles, the Venek. It has these orange things, like colors. You know, like what material is this?
Yeah, was that not Mkhulu's Bible?
I think it was my mother's, you know, Sesotho Bible. She had it. I don't know where she took it from, you know. Man.
So prayer defines your experience. Does God answer your prayers? Because that's one of the biggest challenges in this journey for many Christians. that they end up giving up and abandoning the faith, because for how long, oh Lord, shall it be? Praying that may this thing pass away, and God says, my grace
is sufficient.
Your experience with prayer, I heard you mentioning it.
I am just gonna be honest. In as much as I knew God, but there were times when I doubted God.
Okay.
You know, there were times when I was like, does God hear prayers? Oh, really? How long would we pray? You know? And I felt like the more I prayed, the more my problems would grow. I remember 2021, 2022 and 2021, I went through a lot. You know, I was there. Wow. Rock bottom at the pit there. I was like, hey, go. And I even thought of committing suicide. I was like, no, this is too much. This is too much now. Life is just getting a lot, you know, because I remember again, you know, I came to Pretoria to start over, you know, because after a failed marriage, then you feel like, this is a lot. Right. I'm just going to go away. I can't go back home. You know, I can't go back, you know. And I remember I said to God, you know, I'm going to go.
Okay.
And you
so you are leaving your place, your town where you are known.
Now I have 2 kids.
Wow. I'm
unemployed. Wow. You know, I was, you know how the entertainment industry is like, because I was there already. Sometimes it's quiet.
That's another journey you should tell us about. You keep dropping these things as you go. But I guess your life is such like layers and layers and layers. But I'm interested in this one because I've seen some of your snippets. I always look at your Facebook and I laugh and I'm like, she's got so much energy. Where does she get it from? And talk to me about that. How did you end up into TV? I'm quite curious. That one actually was quite an exciting one. And you're on a national TV.
You know, God.
That girl who was being told,
you're good for nothing, you know. God.
Yeah.
So there was this, how I ended up on TV. There was this auditions, actually, for FIRNZAJJ and what. I was still in the Northwest.
All right.
And I was like, okay, let me try this. Because after that, you just send your clip, 30-second clip, or was it 1 minute? You send it and that's it.
I think it's 30 seconds, yeah.
Yeah. You know, then I did the clip. I was like, okay. Then after I sent it, then they were like, you need to share it to your socials. You know, so that it can get like more likes and stuff like that. And, you know, right. So like, okay, let me just share it. Why not? And God uses people, you know, also to just find us. God speaks.
That's a big lesson you're sharing with us right there to say we must respect the way God sometimes communicates with us. Yes, that's a powerful one.
Because after that, I thought I was just doing it because I had time. Then after that, that's when people were like, girl, you can do this. Why are you not doing it? You know? And that's when I thought, okay, let me do it. You know, let me just get into this and just do it.
Yeah. So, they called you?
Unfortunately, they did not. They did not. But I'm glad that, you know, I put it out there, and ever since then, I got into the industry, and it's been...
So you've done TV, and I saw you say you also did radio.
Yes.
What are you doing on radio?
I also went for auditions.
Okay.
You know, and they were like, we're looking for presenters, what. Then I went. Then I got a call back.
Okay.
You know, I was still in Northwest. So the radio was here in Joburg. So I had to travel every Thursday. I was doing a gospel show every Thursday, you know. I would leave home, come this side and do for 3 hours, then go back. Wow. You know, but then I was happy, and I was happy.
Wow.
So now that I'm there, I feel like, that's why I'm studying now media. I'm studying now all of these things. I'm like, because I have the experience now. Yeah. Let me balance it now with the right qualifications since I'm there already and I love what I'm doing. Yeah. So this is happening at what time in your life? In which space? Is this after you're leaving Northwest to come to Pretoria? No, it's happening during the COVID time. I'm one of those states, the marriage did not survive during COVID. You're kidding. So, you know, this is when everything just went south. Yes. During COVID, when people were like, that's when I just discovered myself. I'm like, so I can also talk on radio. Okay. Wow. And come on, I'm going through a lot. The marriage is falling apart. But So.
Oh no. Wow. So this is like 2020, 2021. COVID ends sometime around 2022. The country is opened and you're on radio. What are you talking about?
God. It was a gospel show. That's what I knew. I also, this is what I know. If you give me current affairs, yes, I know there and there, but I can't. If you tell me about DJ, it's limited. But I can talk about God for hours because I've seen his goodness in my life. So that's what I did. So all 3 radios, I've worked in 3 radio stations. I always got like those gospel shows. Dealing with that, I'm like, I'm fine here. This is what I know.
So what has God planted in your heart that you feel this is what God has told me and this is where he is leading me? This is what he has told me is my purpose.
I said to my friend the other day that, making covenants with God works. God comes through. God comes, he keeps his promises. I remember when I was going through all of that, dealing with a lot, coming this side and, because, when I came this side, I came with nothing. Like literally nothing. I had no plates, I had no spoons, I had to survive with gigs, being called there and there and there. Here I've got kids looking at me like, mommy,
Wow.
we need food. The money that I got will just be enough to pay rent, and we slept on the floor. Wow. 2021, 2022, like we literally slept like this just on a mat.
And you were locked down at home?
No, it was in 2022 when I was this side.
So COVID was now at
when I was this side
out.
To start over, I was already this side with just the kids. I have 2 kids. So we slept on the floor for a couple of months.
Wow.
I remember even my mom saying, why don't you just come and take your bed at home? I was like, no. Because somehow I wanted to trust God so much that, I saw you doing it for Abraham, saying leave and,
Wow.
and now you're going to take care of me because I've got kids now who are looking at me and the money is not enough to buy food, pay rent and buy these beds and what. But eventually, I remember even saying to God, because I had one speaker saying it, I was like, Nami, let me just say this with faith.
Okay.
God, if you do it for me, I will tell people that it was you. And God came through.
What was it that you were telling God and bribing God in
I was
covenant?
not bribing God, sometimes we just need to claim and say, I do it for me.
The promises,
do it for me also. Yes. Because I've seen you doing it for others.
Wow.
Then I started praying that God was like, God, do it for me also. You've done it for others.
What were you asking?
Just a breakthrough, a break from pain, a break from poverty, a break from stress, financial breakthrough especially.
Yes.
It's like, God, if only I can just afford. And you know what God does? When you bath and you're out there, people are like, you don't have problems. That's one thing that I love about God. Yes. Because whenever I told people my challenge, will be like,
you're lying. Yeah.
You're lying. And that time you'll even appear on TV.
Wow.
And sometimes the money is
like
and after that you sleep on the floor. You don't even have a sponge to sleep on, because I was like, the money is for rent and food. Others, so God will just cover you. Wow. He covered me so well. And even when you show up in spaces, your body is in pain because you slept with just a carpet and some pillow. But then, he will cover you up and you will never look like your problems.
Neoh, at this stage, there's got to be something that keeps you holding on. Sometimes it's a verse. What are some of those verses that you kept claiming and reciting that you say, for me, my verse is?
There's a verse one of the verses that was very close to me. It's in 1 Peter chapter 5. Verse 10. It also assured me that suffering or challenges are important on a Christian journey. And when God said rejoice, even, it might not make sense at that time. Or I'm a single mom and I'm in this age, I'm still young, and this is what I'm going through. But there's a verse where God is saying, even in your struggle, and then after your struggles, there's a lot that God will do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 10. But the God of all grace,
the God of all grace,
who has called us into his eternal glory by Jesus Christ, after that you have suffered a while, will make you perfect, will establish you, will strengthen you, will settle you.
Oh, yes.
The triple S. No, it's actually the 4 S's.
You know,
the first one is you suffer first.
You must, yes. So suffering is important.
And then he establishes you.
Yes.
And then gives you strength. And he settles you.
And then he settles you.
Wow. The 4 S's. I'm learning that from you today. Wow.
So that first, the thing is, at times you feel like, hey, the suffering is too long. Because I felt like, this is too much. This is too long. Because I didn't want to reach a point where people will ask me, where's your God? You know, that's what I'm saying. But whenever you show up, even when the kids will go to school, they did so well. My daughter, would get, merits awards. I'm like, God, I don't know how you do it. My suffering, I can see it inside, but people cannot see because you're just doing
those
things.
things you were beaten for not getting your daughter's
she's doing it. I am a proud mom. Even when I get them, I'm the first person to clap hands and make noise. So, I'm like, God will just cover you up. And back to the verse, I saw that it's necessary to suffer a bit, so that also your faith can be strengthened in God. And I learned again to say, you know what, we need to stop approaching God as if we have plan B.
Yeah.
Oh God, now we're approaching God. God, if you don't come through, I have something else. No. I dropped also that attitude and knowing that it's only God or God. Wow. I don't have anything else.
There's no plan B.
We don't have security blanket in case he doesn't answer. I have this. I learned to approach God with that attitude and say, you know what, I also need to surrender to God. My gifts, my talents, everything. I just need to say, you know what, Lord, take over. Even my broken heart, my disappointments, my upbringing, the challenges that I went through, take over and heal me. Because I also knew that now I'm a parent, I needed healing. I needed healing, especially for the kids. And even at that age, I'm also still experiencing some disappointments and pain, but also healing is important. So I started saying to God, deal with me. Deal with me so that you can perfect me, so that, you can establish me, like the verse is saying, and so that you can settle me. Because that verse, on the establishment, again, it says the establishment, I will say, is when you will not be moved or shaken, because challenges of this world at times will come and you feel like, I know God is taking forever. Let me try to do this. I'm also I'm also running businesses whereby you meet people who would say,
another new one now.
But I thought so. Who would say, give me this, I will give you that. Wow. And you have to learn to stand on your word and say, if it's not from God, then I do not want it. Because even on the entertainment industry, I've missed opportunities like that where people say, I can do this for you. Just do this. And you feel like, no, it's not for me. I know who God is. And I know that if it's not mine, then it's okay, let it pass. Wow. Then I come into the mining industry where I'm doing business there again. You meet again people who are like, I can give you this tender. You just need to do this for me. And you have to stand your weight again and say, if it's not from God, because obviously from God, you will not get it like that. Nobody will say, bribe me or let's do this. And then
it's not from God.
You need to stand your weight. You need to stand on business and say, no, I know who God is. Because God has been so good. I cannot disappoint him now.
Now I see where the vibe is coming from, because you have discovered a God who has seen you through.
Yes.
Now, if I was to take you and place you in a space where I would ask you to tell us about your aspirations, the future, Neoh, I don't know whether at whatever age and whatever point in your life, looking ahead, what do you see? What do you aspire? They say, aspire to inspire before you expire. So what are those things you're looking ahead?
Yes. Yes, so obviously, like I said, God has been so great, and God is giving. He will give you ideas and sponsor them, you know. And at the same time, we know we are called for a purpose, and you are still standing for a purpose, and God is busy supplying and keeping you for a purpose. So I know that, you know, I need to have big plans, and because I see myself, I don't want to lie, I see myself being there and making it, because we are working hard, and God is keeping. It's because of God. You know, we can do all things through Him, and I see myself, my business, because now I'm opening another one, and God has also been so faithful. I see it like creating more employment, especially, you know, for people, because I also believe in that, empowering other people and all of that. So I see it being big, and I also see myself giving back to the community. There's an NPO that it will be its first year now. There's an event that I want to do for elderly people, and I want it to be an annual thing.
Wow.
You know. So
God's child is giving back to
we need to
the elders. It's coming back full cycle.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
you consider it a calling? Or it's a passion that you have?
You know, working with people and impacting life, I think it's a calling, because also it's not only that. I want there are women. I have a group of women. I'm still praying about it, because I'm like, God, this is big now. I don't know what to do. Who are coming and saying, you know what, tell us how you're doing it, and we want to do it. And others will say, you know, I'm going through this, and I feel like there's a reason for everything, and the pain and the suffering that we all go through, so that we can point people back to Christ. So I have a group of women who are saying, like, let's do something like this for other women, or help us with this. So I also want to work with women who've been through the most. You know, there are women who've been through the most, you know, and I just want to, you know, encourage and build and empower, and making people to look back to the cross.
In fact, I will share this thought with you, just to thank you for sharing what you're saying now, and to inspire you to go ahead. In life, we will not understand why we go through certain things, and God will never owe us an explanation. You never come down and say, oh, by the way, Neoh, because Job went through what he went through without knowing that his life was an agenda up there. And that what he is going through has actually been sanctioned by God. God only came to him when he had questions, and it was never to give him answers, but to question him even more. So sometimes life never gives us the answers we need, but the things you described today, I find them very powerful. Faith. Keeping hope even during the suffering period. Expecting God to come through for you regardless of what you're going through at that time. And finally, getting some sort of clarity. That's the word I wanted you to catch. Clarity of purpose. And I was going to ask you that question, but you answered it in advance. What are some of the activities you want to use your faith to inspire others? So targeting women, targeting the elderly. But here's the last one I wanted to really share with you. Job lost everything. He didn't lose his wife because he was one with the wife. People don't see that. Many times we don't say that about Job. But God then came to Job the last time. He said, your friends have not spoken well about me. And unless I come down and I judge them, I want you to go and pray for them. And I want to speak to your life and say, it is when you do those things that you'll find your complete restoration and healing. Your verse said, strengthen me, establish me. All right. Because the Bible then says, as Job was praying for his friends, then God healed him and restored him. And the Bible says, some of his friends, I don't know these ones, where they came from, they brought him gifts.
Yes.
Much gifts. And the Bible just summarizes in one statement that, and God blessed him with many more beautiful children. We know it takes time to give birth to children and raise them. So there was a period of abundance that Job went through. So I want to say to you, all the best. And may God restore what you lost. And may He heal where life broke you. And I want to tell you, as long as we are here on earth, bones will break, and so will hearts. But God's business is that He mends us as we mend others. Yes. He restores us as we restore others. I like the concept that one of my brothers came up with. He calls it vessel to vessel. So God uses other people to pour into your life. Yes. And therefore you, when you are full, you must pour into other people's life. And when God shall come, He's going to ask us to account on what we did with His blessings when He came naked, when He was in prison, when He was hungry, when He had nothing to put on. So I wish you well as you go through this phase. Any final thoughts as you reflect now to say, I didn't know this was my life. But what is God revealing to you and what is He saying to you? Any final thoughts perhaps you want to share as we close this one?
It's actually a verse again.
Oh yeah, I see this thing is a big one, eh? No, I'm happy. I'm happy for you.
Man, God has been so amazing, my elder. God has been so good. And I told him that I'm going to tell people that it's you because He has done it. He has done it. And I've seen God. And you know, the sound is it sounds where He says, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Oh, yes.
You know? Because it might not have made sense by then when I was going through the suffering or the challenges. But now when I look at it, I'm grateful that I went through that. Now it makes sense when the Bible says, even in that, just rejoice. Yeah. Be glad. Be glad.
Yes.
You know, and I want to say to people that even in your suffering, be glad. Because after the suffering, then the establishment will come, the settlement will come. Yeah. You know, then God will, And I love also the verse where it says, Romans 8 verse 28, saying that all things work together for good.
You're more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens us.
And it says, for those that love the Lord and those that are called according to His purpose. You know, at times we might not see where God is taking us. But I want to say that, let us just trust God and say, all things are working together for my own good. Because I am called according to His purpose. So now I believe that because I've seen God coming through for me, even if I were to go challenges, like fall
back
down a bit,
into the valley.
I would say, no, I know. This is important. Let me go through this, and and so I will rejoice now. We say, I'm grateful that I went through this, and
I don't want to be your secretary after this interview. So you tell the viewers out there, where do they find you? Because I foresee, I'm not a prophet, but I foresee people calling you to encourage others, to preach, to teach, to share. You do that already. That's how I got to know you.
Yes. But
where can they find
you? Can increase and,
expand.
The ministry must grow.
Yes.
Yes. I'm on Facebook, Neoh Pemi, KNP. That's where you can find me. And on the same on Instagram, Neoh Pemi. TikTok is Neoh Pemi, Miss KNP. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a blessing. And to those who have been watching, thank you so much for this privilege that you have given us. Thank you so much to those who have been watching us. And it's really been a privilege. And we thank God. We really appreciate your time. This is a story, a journey with God. And I pray that this has really ignited something in your heart. If you have a story to share, get in touch with us and let us know how God has led you thus far. God bless you and see you next time. Bye-bye.